Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Leverage AI for Efficient Global Studies. My name is Saj Sahai, and I am the moderator for today's event. An important housekeeping item. We have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar, which will take approximately 30 minutes in total. And we already have some questions submitted we will aim on answering for sure. Any additional questions you submit during the live webinar, we will collate them until the end of the webinar and answer them at the time. So just put them in the chat and just wait until the end. We will try to get to as many of those as we can. Okay, now the more important part. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker for today, Andres Herberger. Andres is the Vice President and Language Advocate at Language Scientific, the leader in medical translation. He has been involved in the translation industry for over 25 years. Today, he manages Language Scientific's relationship with our major clients and regularly writes for industry publications and is a frequent speaker at industry conferences. Without any further delay, I will now turn things over to Andres Herberger. Andres?
Thank you, Saj, for this introduction, and thank you to all of you who are attending. What an amazing turnout! Clearly, a lot of interest in this timely and important topic. As you all know, AI is making its way into clinical research in a big way. From safety monitoring to wearables to improving medication adherence during clinical trials, AI is literally everywhere. In this webinar, I will provide you with an understanding of how AI-assisted translations can streamline global clinical trials without impacting quality or regulatory readiness. We will cover the evolving landscape of clinical trials, the challenges of multilingual content, and how AI is reshaping the future of the translation space. Also important, in the next couple of days, you will receive a copy of this presentation at the email address that you used to register for this event. All right, let's go to slide 3. The majority of clinical trials now span multiple countries and languages. For example, at Language Scientific, the average number of countries is currently at 7 and growing. And emerging markets are becoming particularly important for our clients, at least. And with that comes the challenge of localized outreach and culturally adapted materials for patient recruitment in particular, but throughout the lifespan of a clinical trial. Next slide, please. Each country and region enforces unique regulatory and linguistic requirements. And these are ever-changing. An example of this is the new EU AI Act that's basically coming in force now. Basically, inaccurate or delayed translations can lead to trial delays or even rejections. Turnaround times are tight and deadlines must be adhered to. Translation providers must have the regulatory know-how to navigate this complex and ever-changing landscape. Next slide, please. And it really is a challenging and complex environment, in part because, one, clinical trials contain more content than ever. Two, timelines are tight, and last-minute amendments, for example, can strain traditional workflows. And three, the specialized nature of the content requires deep subject matter expertise. Even within clinical research translations as a subject, there are many subspecialties. For instance, PROs, or regulatory submissions, or endpoint adjudication, all have their own unique requirements with regards to process, schedules, and yes, language as well. Next slide, please. And literal translations are sometimes required if you think about back translations during a linguistic validation, for example. But these literal translations often compromise patient comprehension and engagement. So cultural adaptation is necessary, really essential, for all patient-facing materials, because the risks to regulatory non-compliance and patient safety are all too real. Next slide, please. The traditional translation workflows have long been hampered by manual handoffs between sponsors, CROs, and translation providers. And that creates delays and numerous project management challenges. Two, a lack of centralized translation memories and glossaries can lead to inconsistencies, particularly if multiple translation providers work side by side. And three, review cycles can be lengthy and fragmented, which creates a whole slew of additional challenges around consistency of the final translated materials. AI-assisted translation can help alleviate some of these bottlenecks. And let's take a look at some of those now. Next slide, please. It's important to note, I think, that at Language Scientific, we don't see AI as a shortcut. For us, AI is a strategic asset, and it's really no exaggeration to say that it's reshaping how we support our clinical research clients. And AI is no longer experimental. At Language Scientific, we integrate AI and domain-specialized linguists and validated platforms into structured workflows to meet global trial demands. Next slide, please. Yeah, and NMT delivers faster and context-aware translations, especially for high-volume content. There are still many sponsors who resist the use of machine translation, but more and more of them are starting to embrace it. And we've really seen a shift over the past 6 to 9 months. As the EU AI Act gets fully implemented, we expect more sponsors to embrace the use of AI, and also to look to custom-trained engines for life science terminology to further improve accuracy. For instance, we work with several clients currently on building and maintaining these. Next slide, please. There are real challenges with using AI generally and machine translation specifically for PROs particularly. Think data security, intellectual property, privacy, for example. But increasingly, the synergy of AI, machine translation, and human expertise can and does streamline and improve various steps of the linguistic validation process. And it does that by, for example, auto-suggesting edits, ensuring consistency with glossaries, detecting offensive terms. But it's important to note, in our highly regulated industry, expert human oversight is indispensable. But by using AI and machine translation where appropriate, we have seen cost and time reductions of as much as 1/3. So nothing to sneer at all, and greatly appreciated by our clients and sponsors. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned a minute ago, we don't view AI as a shortcut or as a replacement for human translators. But real challenges do remain. For instance, not all languages are equal when it comes to using machine translation. Use AI to translate an informed consent form into Spanish? Sure. Into Haitian Creole? Absolutely not. So it's important also to keep that in mind. Again, the corpus available for machine translation is obviously not the same for all languages around the world. And when not using machine translation, AI-assisted tools can still offer linguists benefits like predictive typing, terminology suggestions, and real-time quality checks. Also, what is called edit distance metrics and technologies can significantly increase the efficiency of post editors. Next slide, please. So at Language Scientific, we measure quality in AI-human hybrid workflows with 3 key metrics. First is terminology consistency and adherence to regulatory requirements. Absolutely important. Second, translator productivity metrics, which measure productivity improvements and translation reuse rates from AI-driven translation memories. And third, regulatory readiness metrics, measuring first-pass regulatory approval rates as well as review cycle efficiency. And then we pair these 3 metrics with customer satisfaction scores and continuous improvement KPIs, which are based on client audits and assessments. And really, we have found that this approach provides us with a consistent and reliable way to assess translation quality. Next slide, please. As I said, AI is not just a tool, it's a strategic enabler and asset. And when paired with domain specialized linguists and, importantly, in-country reviewers, translation goes from being a bottleneck to being a competitive advantage. Next slide, please. At Language Scientific, we aggressively leverage AI to assist our specialized linguists and not to replace them. It is a big shift in the translation space that we're going through, and certainly not all linguists are embracing machine translation or AI in general, but that is changing and also changing rapidly. But because for the foreseeable future, human linguists will continue to ensure accuracy and compliance. There's just no way around that. And importantly, clinical translators bring cultural nuance, therapeutic expertise, and it must be said also ethical oversight to the process. We think of this as a human in the loop model to safeguard clinical accuracy. Next slide, please. And it's fundamentally, it's a force multiplier. And again, we see this in AI in all walks of life, and translation is no different. AI handles some of our repetitive tasks so that we see up to 50% faster delivery with zero compromise on quality. Next slide, please. A couple of final thoughts. AI supports and humans decide is a key concept for us. And as sponsors gain confidence in AI-powered, human-validated translation workflows, the number of clinical research organizations that will say yes to AI-assisted translations will continue to grow. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we will send you the slides in the next couple of days. You'll get this entire set. And I think, Saj, I think now we have some time for questions. Seems we're having some technical difficulties.
Can you hear me now, Andres?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, it was some kind of glitch happening. Okay, great. Thank you. You did great. 15 minutes is exactly what we wanted to because we wanted to share these questions. There are a lot of questions that have come in already predating the actual live session, and now I think there might even be more. But let me start off with the first one I received. Can you share specific examples of how AI has helped reduce translation timelines in real clinical trials, and by how much?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's at the heart of what everybody's wondering about, right? So while while there are clear efficiency improvements that are possible, it's also not a magic wand that you're waving, because there's still human involvement throughout the process. Again, more efficient, shorter, yes, but still human involvement. But excuse me, in our experience with global clinical studies, AI-assisted workflows, particularly those that leverage neural machine translation and AI-driven translation memories, have consistently reduced the linguistic aspect, the translation aspect of a project by 30 to 50%. So that is nothing to sneer at, and we fully expect further improvements on that. And as an example, we had a recent oncology study that we supported across 20 countries, and AI-supported translation tools cut delivery from 12 weeks down to 7 weeks. So that's a roughly, if my math is correct, roughly 40% reduction in time. And that really enabled the sponsors to initiate patient enrollment sooner and meet, their ever shrinking deadlines as well. So I hope that gives you a sense of what we're seeing in the real world.
That's a great example, 40%. Okay, we had a bunch of questions in similar genre to this next one, and I'm sure it's on the minds of all of our listeners here. How do regulatory bodies like the FDA or EMA, the European one, view AI-assist translations? Are there any guidelines or concerns about using AI for regulatory documents?
Yeah, it's a good question. And as I mentioned, the regulatory environment is quickly evolving. Today, neither FDA nor EMA has set forth specific rules for AI-assisted translations, but both organizations will still require human oversight, traceability, and written QA processes. Interestingly, though, the FDA, for example, has received hundreds of applications that reference AI. That's over the past 5 or 6 years. And that number is increasing. And the EU AI Act is only just beginning to be enforced. And it'll be really interesting to see what the impact of that will be. But at the end of the day, AI solutions can be used as part of a well-defined workflow. So, for example, within ISO certified quality management processes. And as long as qualified linguists are reviewing and validating the results. It's also key to meet regulatory expectations around accuracy, auditability, and then subject matter expertise, of course, for the material being translated. And that's especially if content is intended to be patient-facing, again. Regulatory submissions likewise are key in that whole process. So again, as I mentioned, we have an increasing number of sponsors who are comfortable with some AI machine translation use. But I do think one of the things that's holding organizations back is a relative lack or evolving of regulatory standards. So we'll see in the months and years to come where we go with this.
Great answer. Thank you. That was, I'm sure, a lot of people's minds. Okay. You talked about neural machine translation in your presentation. What types of clinical trial documents are safe to translate using NMT, and which still require full human translation from scratch?
Yeah, and that's a good thing to be clear about. So neural machine translation is particularly effective for high volume, structured documents. So that might be consent forms, instructions for use, investigator brochures. So I think that's tailor-made for those applications. On the other hand, documents that require nuanced clinical interpretation, maybe like a clinical outcomes assessment or other highly specialized medical content, really still necessitate complete human translation, or at the very minimum, a very rigorous human oversight post-editing process, because there's just too much risk otherwise, and it'll be some time, I predict, before sponsors are comfortable with using NMT in those settings. So I hope that answers that question.
Great. Okay. Again, you mentioned cultural appropriateness quite a few times in your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a question around that here. How do you ensure cultural appropriateness in patient-facing materials when using AI tools?
Yeah, so to ensure cultural appropriateness in patient-facing materials, we apply a structured hybrid workflow. In practice, that human in the loop process that I mentioned earlier integrates AI and human tasks, right? So let me give you an example. AI-generated drafts are reviewed and refined by expert medical translators with native-level language skills and clinical knowledge. And for cognitive debriefings, for example, they are conducted by domain expert in-country reviewers to confirm cultural and contextual accuracy. In addition, a continuous human feedback loop ensures that AI models gradually will learn cultural nuances, reducing literal translation errors and improving relevance and patient comprehension. It's interesting. Just over the past few months, we've seen two pharmaceutical companies move to an AI-assisted translation workflow for patient-facing materials. So, while there are unique challenges in those applications, companies are starting to say, hey, the potential benefits of this outweigh the risks, as long as we can build a sturdy enough process around it to safeguard. So I hope that's helpful for patient-facing.
Thank you. That's great. That was very clear. All right. Another area that I know there's been a bunch of chatter around, I'm going to try to put it into one concise question. It's around confidentiality and data security, which is a huge issue these days, as we know. How do you handle confidentiality and data security when using AI tools for clinical translations? What do you do?
Yeah, this is such an important topic. And at Language Scientific, we ensure confidentiality and data security by doing 5 things. And this is always, if not the first, one of the top 5 questions that clients ask us. What do you do about that? So our answer is, 1, we only use secure cloud environments with strict access controls and that are compliant with standards such as ISO 27001, HIPAA, etc. So that's like the baseline minimum. Then we also employ AI systems that are hosted internally or via trusted providers with strict data residency and encryption policies. The other standard part of our process is to redact or anonymize sensitive information, such as personally identifiable information, where possible. It's not always possible. And ensure secure data handling agreements and business associate agreements are in place. also becoming pretty much just baseline requirements, these types of things. And then lastly, we conduct regular audits and risk assessments of our AI providers and workflows. And we found that that leaves clients and sponsors nodding and saying, "Yep, that's a solid approach." And but we get regularly audited for these types of things as well, and so it's something that we take very, very seriously. Do we have another question?
Yeah, I think we have one last question that just came in, and I think this is, I'm sure it's on everybody's mind. Are there risks that AI might introduce errors that human beings might miss because they trust the AI output too much?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it made you smile, but I'm sure that's a question that you've been thinking about a lot.
Yeah, and it happens not as frequently as I would be worried about, but frequently enough that yes, automation bias is a real concern. And I mean, it's a silly thing. You get an AI overview when you do a Google search or you ask ChatGPT something. The temptation is that, oh yeah, that sounds real. That sounds like it makes sense. So it must be right. And as we all know, hallucination is a real thing. So same thing with regard to translation. And there are 3 steps that we take to avoid this. First of all, our team has implemented mandatory structured human review steps to actively check AI output. Again, machine translation as much as anything else. Second, we regularly train translators to critically evaluate AI-generated content themselves and maintain vigilance. So there's proactive training going on around that. And then third, we also integrate automated as well as manual linguistic quality assurance processes that detect common AI-generated mistakes. And it's kind of a sign of the times, I guess, to think about, oh, you use AI to check the quality of AI, but there are in fact applications and use cases for that. And so I hope this helps and gives a little bit of insight into this automation bias and how we try to overcome it.
I'll never forget that word now. I learned something new from you today. Not that I don't learn something new every day. Thank you. Great. I think we've gone through the questions.
Okay, great.
Perfect timing. We have about 2 minutes left. So let me just kind of recap what we heard today. And first of all, Andres, thank you so much for being our incredible presenter today and answering all those questions. As everyone can see on the screen, Language Scientific's URL is www.languagescientific.com. Please go on there. You can see we have a lot of different pages, including on our front page, about how we use AI-assisted translation. We have a lot of blogs that are of interest of you. I'm sure you will find that you could learn from. But overall, you get a great sense of a lot of the materials that Andres spoke about today and how we employ that in our company. And I urge you all to do that. And thank you again for coming. And as Andres said in the beginning of this call, within a couple of days, you will be getting a link to this actual webinar sent to you by email. So thank you for joining us today. And today that concludes the webinar, Leverage AI for Efficient Global Clinical Studies. Thank you again.